What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we welcome on fellow Clare person, Amie Wiley. Amie, thank you so much for jumping on. Do you want to give a little introduction into who you are, what you do, where you're from?
Yes, so my name is Amie Wiley. Born and bred in County Clare, a very proud Banner woman.
Lovely.
So I'm an online health and wellness coach and the founder of Active with Amie, which is my coaching service that does that basically.
Very nice. And what is Active with Amie exactly when you break it down?
So if I was to explain it in one sentence, I suppose it's obviously a one-to-one coaching service from myself, but it brings movement and mindfulness together, two things I'm hugely passionate about, and obviously two things that play into the whole fitness and wellness side of things. Health, fitness, wellness, exercise, it literally is the biggest passion of mine, which kind of, I suppose, started when I was very young, playing sport and stuff, and it's something that's never left me. So the fact I get to now work with it and work with people and helping people as my career is just absolutely amazing.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm very interested in myself. So when you look at mindfulness, there's so many avenues you can go down. What ways do you look at it specifically? What aspects of mindfulness do you focus on?
So there's so many different aspects. This is such a broad term, but if I was even just to speak to myself in mindfulness kind of practices I put into my own day-to-day life, it can be through movement, and it can be through other things like meditation. So obviously exercise, I find a very mindful practice. Like, you're concentrated on something, whether it be weightlifting, like basically it's something that you can just focus your whole time and effort onto. So you're not literally overwhelmed by thoughts in your brain. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. My background, actually, before I even got into this coaching, probably should have mentioned, is in psychology. So I have a 4-year degree in psychology as well. So I think that plays into it. So there's many different practices, but many different ways that you can be mindful. You can put it into your day-to-day life. You can do meditation, yoga, exercise. You can find your state of flow. This is coming into like a positive psychology side of it, where this is where you find an activity that you completely just lose complete track of time on when you're doing it. For me, that could be sea swimming. It could be pucking a ball against a wall. For someone else, it could be drawing. It could be anything. I could talk on this topic for so long. There's genuinely so many avenues that we could explore, but mindfulness to an individual can be different. It's about tapping into what that individual, I suppose, is into. And that's what I do with my coaching. Essentially, it's finding that person's mindfulness practices. But there are obviously the mainstream ones, like the meditation, the yoga, and all those that, like, basically.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think that's something that often people get caught up in, is the idea of, okay, if I want to do mindfulness, I have to either focus on meditation or yoga, or obviously you have journaling as well. But what you mentioned there about pucking a ball against the wall, that's one of my go-tos. It's literally just kicking a ball against the wall, kicking a ball around with a couple of the lads, like thinking of nothing else, only the next kick, or literally going out for a walk in nature, going for a swim, or going for a surf. I think people miss out on that a lot, and they don't realize how much of an effect that can have on their mind. I suppose they don't put it in the same package as mindfulness in ways. What other ways do you look at that? Like, obviously you said pucking a ball against the wall. Is there anything else that you do I saw on your story this morning, you were out with your dog going for a walk? Do you count that towards your mindfulness practice as well?
Yes, absolutely. I actually completely forgot to mention journaling as well. That's one that I do all the time and one that I do recommend. But I suppose, see, I'm just a very mindful person in general, because I've been practicing it for years, and it's something that is really, really important to me and to my day-to-day well-being. So I genuinely think it's just anything where you can have you time and clear your head and clear your worries a small bit. So for me, that comes in any form of exercise. So that literally could be dancing, it could be walking, it could be running. I still play GAA, it could be GAA, pucking a ball against the wall. Otherwise, like, I have a massive interest in music. I taught myself to play the piano when I was 11. That was a state of flow for me growing up, still is. Listening to music, finding new music, like picking apart music, all that type of stuff. That's another mindfulness practice for me. And the rest, I suppose, you can just train yourself to do. Like, genuinely, it's not something to be overcomplicated. One example that I always give, for example, is you basically want to get someone from a high stress level or an overwhelmed level to like a more calm level, because that's where we function more optimally as humans, essentially. So one example I always give is if you're driving your car and you get to a traffic light and it goes amber and it goes red, you are so annoyed in that moment because you're like, oh my God, the light is red. This is frustrating me. It literally happens to, I'm going to say 99.9% of people, because there might be a 1.1% or a 0.1%. Instead, at that moment, notice that you are feeling so stressed and you're feeling so angry and you're feeling so many of these like heightened emotions. And instead, just choose to be mindful in the moment. So it's all about changing a response to a situation. That's what mindfulness is essentially. And if you can change your response, you're going to change your mood, you're going to change your day. So at that traffic light, use that as a moment to be mindful. So what I like to do instead, I will still feel less stress come on because it's just an 8. It's just going to happen. Like it's just an annoying situation. But instead of it letting it overwhelm me, what I'll be like is, right, okay, I'm going to look up from the steering wheel right now. I'm going to look around and I'm going to actually take in what's around me. We do not do that. We work on autopilot all the time. And I think that's heightened by screen use and everything as well. Everything's so quick and fast all the time. So that, yes, is a really, really good example of how you can, suppose, add mindfulness to your day. It's like when a situation like that happens, you can't change it. So just be a bit more mindful, and it's actually a lot more enjoyable. You notice some things you would never even notice, and even in your hometown that you would drive past all the time, just little things like that you can do. But I suppose the first step is just being aware of it, and that comes by actively just, I suppose, having the intention to do it more.
Yeah, that's a good point. In that, I think the traffic light one is a perfect one, because how often do you go, as you say, you get caught in that situation, and then everything that has gone wrong for the whole day comes to top of mind, instead of just taking that minute to really relax and chill out. But I think that in that way as well, when you look at mindfulness, I heard a great quote. It was actually maybe from Tim Ferriss. He probably obviously took it from someone else, but it was that when you're sitting down, when you're meditating, when you're doing that, it's not, I guess this goes down the avenue of meditation specifically. It's not exactly the idea of you need to sit there and sit still and everything needs to be 100%. It's the idea of catching yourself and bringing you back to the moment is the most important thing. That's what he described as the bicep curl of mindfulness and meditation. Do you meditate yourself?
I do. Not as much as I should. I would prefer to use it as a preventative rather than a cure, but I do see myself or find myself going back to it a lot when I'm in like a more, say, stress state, or I need to just chill out a small bit, I suppose.
And what are the benefits then that you get on a day-to-day from being more mindful? What are some things that you've noticed? Because it's obviously a practice it's a skill that needs to be learned. It's not something that just comes to people naturally in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like you probably heard the saying, like the mind is a muscle as well. It needs to be worked out, basically. It's like when we work out our muscles in the gym. That's what you do with your mind. Meditation is that, and it trains your brain. It's basically, there's like, it lowers your response time to a situation. So we can be so hyper reactive to things, and controlling your emotions is genuinely the most powerful thing you can do. And to control your emotions, you have to obviously control your mind, and then obviously as a result of that, you'll control your response and stuff like that. So it just slows down the process from say having a thought to responding to something, to responding to a situation. On top of that as well, it's just a really nice time out thing as well. Like, if you were to meditate, for example, like it doesn't need to be another thing. People think it needs to be like 45 minutes a day. Genuinely, if you can sit for 5 minutes and just focus on your breath, it's going to be so beneficial for you and for your whole day. So it's just, I suppose, knowing that 5 minutes is selfishly for you, because life is so busy. And especially after COVID, we went from a busy life to then like a blissful, quiet life. And then when COVID ended, it was going back to that busy life, but X3, because we weren't used to it anymore. So it's just using these little tools, tips and tricks that we can, like tap into, just to make day-to-day life stressors that small bit easier. That's what I find the most beneficial for me anyways, when it comes to meditation.
And do you use ice baths? I know you mentioned ice baths there. Ice baths, sauna. For me, sauna, like I think sauna is probably the optimal one for me. I do meditate in the morning, but maybe only for 10 or 12 minutes. But sauna, there's no choice. Once you're in there, you can't focus on anything else but just, all right, I need to stick this out for another 5 minutes. There's no, it makes it so much more, it's like a forced meditation in ways. Do you use the sauna or ice baths yourself?
So it's actually really interesting. Before we started this podcast, Robbie and I were talking about climates and stuff, and I was saying to him how I absolutely love the cold, and he was like, I absolutely love the heat. And this is where we would differ. I would use them, yes, but I love ice baths. And I know I'll probably sound crazy saying that, but I genuinely get such a thrill out of them. If I was to go back to state of flow, the thing I was talking about at the start of this, sea swimming in Ireland is one of my state of flows. And to make it even harder, I sea swim at sunrise. So that's like peak in the summertime. I'd be getting up at 4:20 a.m., 4:15 a.m. to drive 40 minutes to Lahinch. You know Lahinch, you're Clare lad as well.
Not too far.
To drive to Lahinch to go. Yeah, so you're much closer. I'm like a 40-minute drive to get up and to go swim. And that is so mentally challenging. Like to get up at that hour, to be out in the cold and to get into freezing water. But it's like it teaches you mental resilience. But the reason I love it is like genuinely the feeling you get after it, like that dopamine release, like that releases about like for about 3 to 4 hours throughout the whole day. It's not like a quick hit like we get on our phone. It's like delayed gratification, we'll say. And like trying to like train myself to delay gratification as well is a huge thing, especially with social media and phones and everything like that as well. Completely went on a tangent with that, but to answer your question, absolutely love ice baths, more so for the mental challenge. Then obviously, of course, the feeling after, I wouldn't do it if I didn't get that after. Saunas are amazing, but no, wouldn't be the top of my list.
Yeah, that's it. No, I absolutely, now that you say it, in terms of sea swimming, that's something that I miss massively here in Buenos Aires at the moment, because there's no place that you can go for a swim. There's no like open water that you can go for a swim. You have to go either north or south of the city, because the waters is it's like Bali river water in ways. It's a bit filthy, and it is that you wouldn't be too keen on going into it. But sea swimming, yeah, for me is huge as well. And one of the other things, I recently had a researcher on the podcast. She wrote the book Blue Spaces, and Dr. Catherine Kelly was actually her name, and she talks about the idea of going into the sea. There's so many more benefits to it as opposed to even just the cold water. The idea of it being a therapeutic landscape as well is huge for the mind, because basically, now I'm going to paraphrase and I'm going to ruin the way she describes it. She describes it perfectly herself, but the idea of it being a therapeutic landscape, it makes you think that the world is a lot bigger. You're a lot smaller in this big world, and it kind of gets rid of all those little problems that you have. And at the same time, when you get into the cold water, that it brings you back to yourself, in that your senses are so focused on one thing. It's the same idea of being it's like a forced meditation in ways. But the other thing is that, and this is where you go into the spiritual side of things, is that there is a ion exchange as well, like a grounding exchange with the water when you go in, that it's supposed to like reset your body in ways that I wouldn't even be able to explain. I don't know if you've ever come across that, the idea of grounding and the idea of grounding in seawater.
Never heard of it. The only thing I think about that would come to my head is just grounding in terms of nature. Obviously, the sea and the ocean is nature. We're always drawn back to nature. It's just from an evolutionary perspective, that's where we've come from. And it makes sense, obviously. But in terms of the whole other spiritual side of it, no, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, no, there's an inch. I would only ruin it now if I was to go into it. So I won't go into detail on it. But yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people could benefit from as well. And maybe some people are a bit hesitant. I think the growth of the groups, like the sea swimming groups, is a great thing in Ireland. I see it a lot. Even some of my own clients have started working with people that they've started their own groups. And I think if anyone is interested in it, find 2 or 3 people that you can go down and go in for a dip with, because going down the first time by yourself can be very challenging in ways. I don't know if you ever came across that, but I think having 2 or 3 people with you makes it more of a group thing. It makes it more enjoyable, and the accountability as well is huge with it. So I think after that, I know you're going to move into New York. How are you going to get in your sea dips? You're going to have to go to the Hamptons, Long Island.
Yeah, I know. So I was there at the end of I've lived in New York twice before. I lived in the Hamptons, did 2 day ones there. Then I was meant to do a grad visa, didn't happen because of COVID. So hence why, fast forward to 2023, I am currently still in my visa process, which is very, very long for the visa I'm getting, but I'm going to be there by the end of this summer. Now, it's something I do find really challenging. So I was there last year, October to December. Again, trialing it out to see if I wanted to live there long term. Obviously came to the conclusion that I wanted to. And in that time, and to be honest, anytime I live in a city, I've lived in London before as well. Anytime I live in a city that there's no water nearby, I genuinely do struggle, because it's something that I do love so much. So there was one of the days, and it was in the middle of November. I hopped on the Lear, which is the train that takes you from New York City the whole way 3 hours out to the end of Long Island to Montauk. And I just spent the whole day at the beach. So like, you can do it. It's going to take me 3 hours, 6 hours in total. But like, if it's something that brings me joy and resets me for a couple of weeks, I absolutely will. Now, with that being said, I will be living between Ireland and New York. So it's not like I'm going to be there for 12 months of the year where it's a bit of a struggle, you know? I'll still be able to come home. And that's the most beautiful thing about Ireland. And one of the main reasons I'm moving to New York is it's so close to home. It's a 5-6 hour flight max. I'm home then in County Clare, my favorite place, west of Ireland, and I can, get my sea fixes in, get my water in and stuff. But if I have to, I will get on the Lear and pop out to Long Island because it's needed for me, definitely.
Oh, that's, as I was saying, that's something I miss massively here. Is, I guess, looking at traveling and looking at how it affects the mindset and affects your beliefs in ways. I know we were talking before about some of the reasons that you were going to New York, and obviously there's personal and professional reasons. In terms of Asia, what are some things that you learned when you were in Asia? What are some things? How did Asia change your beliefs in ways? Obviously, we met in Bali originally, I should say.
Yeah, so I moved to Bali for the first time last year, and I just actually came home from Bali 2 weeks ago. This year, I was out there for 2 months this year. Um, Asia was so eye-opening. I think if I was to give one example, I love to give like a little story behind or context behind stories. But I was in, well, Bali was amazing, of course. And I'll get to that in a second. But Vietnam, for example, I went to Vietnam and I went to northern Vietnam to a place called Ha Giang. And I did the Ha Giang loop where you drive motorbikes around the northern Vietnamese mountains for 3 days.
Nice.
And that was the most amazing, amazing, amazing experience of my whole life. And to this day, it's still like literally the highlight of my whole life. For 3 days, driving around these mountains in a really small, localized area, seeing how the world worked there, seeing how happy the children were for what, like, with what they had, seeing how happy the people were. Like, it was just like, I actually can't even put it into words. Like, one of the days, right, we went to this waterfall. It's called Dujia Waterfall. And we got there, obviously we were tourists and whatever, but we got there, our tour guide had brought us there. And when we got there was these little tiny children, I think there was 4 or 5 of them, jumping off the waterfall, like from heights. Like they were so high, jumping into this cold water, getting straight back out, doing it again. The laughs, the giggles, the joy, that was all they had. And they were so happy with what they had. I even get goosebumps when I talk about it, because the fact I got to experience that and experience how they lived their life so purely with what they had was just the most amazing thing ever. And it just, I suppose it gets you out in your head. Like, when you're in Western society, there's so many little problems that when you actually break them down are not that big at all. And that's where mindfulness, I suppose, comes in as well, to make you, to kind of train you to see that. But like when you're in like in Asia or in a country like Vietnam or in like a small town like that with the localized population, and you're seeing how they actually live life when it's so different to your own, not only is it like eye-opening, it's just, I don't actually know how to describe it. It's just insane.
Yeah, Vietnam. Like, obviously Bali is a very westernized island, but in ways it's very westernized. Yeah, Vietnam is like, you can get into the deep end there. You really can. Like, obviously, if you go to Ho Chi Minh or Saigon, whichever one you want to call it, if you go there, it's westernized. It's a huge city, and the same thing with Hanoi at the top. But on the in between parts, as you said, people who literally have, let's say, in Western society's way of looking at it, they don't have a lot of extra. You could say, like, they don't really have too much extra there. But there's such a sense of well-being. There's such a sense of like friendliness. I think friendliness is a huge thing there. That they will give you anything. They'll help you with anything. I don't know. It's definitely something that's missing from our society. Now, I have to say, at the same time, if you go into the country in Ireland, I know you're from country, aren't you? In Clare, where are you from in Clare? Actually, I don't think I've ever asked you.
I'm from Clare Castle, so I wouldn't say major.
Oh, you're not country. Oh yeah, okay, you're Clare Castle. Fair. Yeah, but still, you're out the west coast of Ireland. In a lot of ways, I think that we get similar experiences. Obviously, there's a lot of people. You have, like, there's a lot of wealth, or people have a lot of excess in ways. But I think in Ireland, we're lucky that kind of friendliness side of things is still around. People are very helpful in ways. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
No, definitely. And like the first time I really, really like noticed that was when I moved to America for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, why are people not nice here? But it's just
so New York is an interesting choice.
Know. Oh my God, 19-year-old Amie going to New York, and literally, oh, I can't even describe it, but obviously opened my eyes to what the world is really like, which you need sometimes. But I think when you think of Asia and you think of Western societies, what Asia have absolutely mastered is the sense of community. And we thrive in a sense of community, evolutionary perspective. Again, like when we're in a community, we are safe. That's where it comes from. That's where we find joy and stuff like that. Then, of course, like if I was even to use that waterfall example again, there's nature involved in that as well. evolutionary perspective, we are happy when we are in nature. So that's what they have, and they're appreciating what they have. And like, if I was to again go into psychological terms, they're living in an abundant mindset, not a lack one. Whereas I feel like we live a lot in lack. We're like chasing the next thing. We're not appreciating what we have. And that's something that we need to train ourselves to get out of. Whereas obviously in Asia, they have that abundant mindset. Whereas, yeah, like I said, here we have it in lack, where we can actually change your mindset through gratitude by doing that here. So that's why we'll probably get to it in a second, but I designed and released my very own gratitude journals, and it's basically to train people to do that. So you do your gratitude every day. You just list 3 things. Sometimes there could be 6 in total of things that you're grateful for that you already have, and it just changes your mindset to slow down and be like, oh my god, like I'm actually so lucky for what I do have. Why am I focusing on what I don't have? So I think that's the gap between we'll say Asia and Western society in terms of mindsets maybe.
Yeah, great point. Let's dive into that a small bit. Where do you think that comes from in Western society?
What's up guys, Robbie here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just wanted to take a quick moment to ask for your help. Could you please take a minute to leave us a rating on whatever you're listening to this right now? The ratings and reviews mean the world to us, and they help us to understand what you love about the show as well as what we can improve on. Plus, it does actually help us reach even more listeners again. Thank you so much for your support so far, and we are getting straight back into it right now.
Why do you think we have that? Is it a capitalistic society? Is it?
I just think because everything is so easy and so on demand when we want it. I always refer back to social media, and I genuinely think it is the root for it, if I was to say, just because everybody has a phone, everybody has a tablet, they're always in their hands. They're always like, you can search anything you want in 2 seconds. You can order anything you want in 2 seconds. Everything is so quick. And I think by having that, and also like you're getting that fake like dopamine hits when you're on your phone and you're scrolling, and you know yourself with social media and how it is nowadays. And I just think because everything is so readily available and so easy to get here, and there is so much that you can get here, people don't slow down and actually realize how lucky they are. It's like, for example, right, if you were to play sport and you were to injure your foot, your whole life, all you've known is sport. Then all of a sudden, just like that, you're out of sport for 4 months. And all you can think about is, oh my God, I should have appreciated my foot more when I was working. It's like that. It's like until something is taken away from you, you actually don't appreciate it. So you just need to slow down and to appreciate it. And we live in such a fast-paced environment that it's hard to do that. So we actually have to train ourselves to do it, which is unfortunate, but I'm glad that we can train ourselves to do it.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it even stems deeper than that. I would look at, like, before social media, the idea of growth and the idea of success is so driven here, and with that, you always have to be forward looking. You always have to be goal orientated. While in Asia, there's, I guess, for good reason, that you could say that's where meditation was developed in a way. Obviously, India, I think, is maybe not the origin of meditation, but where it became a lot more popularized. And the same thing was like with that Western or Eastern medicine. There's a big focus on, especially around Chinese medicine, on integrating all aspects of your life with your environment. Like, if you wanted to go to what Western society feel that we have figured out recently is this biopsychosocial model. Maybe you've come across that. It's like your biological, your psychological, and your social. So it's all the things that you're talking about there, how your biological affects your psychological, how your psychological, and vice versa. And the same thing with how your social, your friends, your family, and your community. But I think it's hilarious actually that we feel that we've this thing figured out in Western side, and now they're writing papers on it and all. But if you look at like the Chinese literature from years ago, like from whatever thousands of years ago, they've been talking about the same thing for years, integrating balance and trying to find balance in your life. And I think that's something that we miss out on a lot in Western culture because of the idea that we're always looking for growth. And it's very difficult to look for growth consistently and then have balance at the same time. But what you were talking about there with the gratitude and the gratitude journal is a great way of bringing you back into yourself and understanding that you do have these things around you. How did you, I guess, why did you start looking at gratitude?
Yeah, so if I was to give background, I come from a very low income family, so struggling family my whole life, right? So I think I'm just able to appreciate the little things in life because that's how I've grown up. I've never had anything extortionate. I would never be able to, like, if, for example, my friends were going to cinema, I personally wouldn't be able to afford to go to cinema or that extra 20 euro or something like that. So it's just been primed in me to appreciate what I already have and appreciate the little things. Because when you grow up having so little, you are genuinely so grateful for what you do have because you know what the struggle's like around you. So if I was to say where it stemmed from, that is absolutely it. And then when it came to COVID times, I obviously, like, I noticed it in like my friends, my family, obviously online, you see it everywhere. Everyone's like just so caught up like obviously on the world coming to a close, but then they automatically just started to slow down and be like, oh my God, there's so much more serious things going on in the world right now. People are dying, people are really sick. I am so grateful that I have this. I'm so grateful I have my health. So that was like the first time I saw people really getting into it, which was fantastic. So I used a gratitude journal before I even designed my own one. But then what happened was COVID started to end again. And I just began to notice the shift again, where people were just like not grateful for things again, because COVID was coming to an end. Life was getting back to normal. So it was October 2021. I was living in Dublin at the time, went out for a walk one morning. It's usually my walks, like 6 a.m. in the morning. I get all my ideas walking along, and I was like, that's it. I'm just going to go home now and design my own gratitude journal and release this to people to help with mindsets. I never thought it would be as successful as it was. It was genuinely just, it still is just something to help people. Because I can see, like, I saw it already, like ahead of time, that life obviously is going to get back to normal, and it's just going to go straight back to the rat race, and it's going to be worse than it was before. So anything that I can do for myself to make it easier for myself, but also for people as well. Like, I have a social media following, so if I could bring this out to people as well to improve their well-being and their mindsets, I absolutely would, or wanted to. So went home, and of course, when it's a passion project, it gets done like that. So I had the thing designed in, I think it was 2 hours. I had a graphic designer source to make it look pretty, because that's not my forte. And then I had it ready to go in 2 weeks. Now the printers were a bit of a mare. They took me about 4 months, but we got it done. And then it was a product. And I've seen how many times, like, I get messages still on the daily of how much it's like impacted people's lives and their mindsets and their mentalities and stuff, and just enabled them to slow down. So yeah, it's just amazing. But it came from me innately just appreciating the little things in life, and also sometimes along my journey losing that appreciation and wanting to remind myself that I need to appreciate the important things, I suppose.
And do you use other forms of journaling as well, or would you mostly focus in around gratitude yourself?
Gratitude is my favorite one, I must say. But in the past year, I've really gotten into actual journaling. So like genuinely just like word vomit on a page.
Yeah.
So for that, and like I just innately would do it. For my own mindset and just to declutter my mind, I like to call it. So last year it was the start of this year, I created an ebook called Declutter Your Mind. It's basically an ebook that talks about all things journaling, what it is, what it does, and then it has journal prompts at the end if you're not someone that can just sit down and write out what you want and like declutter your mind. Essentially, it's just there to help you. So that's something that I would do. I actually got really into it in Bali last year. So I found how beneficial it was the first time. Yeah, I suppose it's been 2 years now, 2.5. But it's so beneficial. Again, it gets your stressors out of your head and onto paper. And sometimes when we have so many things in our brains, it's a lot more overwhelming than it seems. When it's written out on paper, it's like, okay, that's it. It's like your to-do list. When you write your to-do list out and it's right there in front of you, you're like, okay, I can actually tackle this now. Whereas the same with your thoughts, when they're not really in your head and jumbled up, and they're actually just out on paper, and you just have a sense of like a sigh of relief. That's what I suppose get from it. And it's good for goal setting as well, with the like journal prompts and stuff, if you want to go down that avenue. So it's not all about decluttering your mind, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the decluttering your mind, though, is probably one of the best, for me anyway, one of the biggest benefits that I get from it in ways that, like, do you know when there's like 3 things on your mind? And let's use a really simple example. I need to go to the gym, I need to pick up shopping, I need to wash my clothes. And if you look at those, when you're sitting down thinking you're trying to do a bit of work, and one's going to the next, so it's like, oh, I need to go to the gym. Right, I need to actually now get that shopping. You actually get stuck in a circle of just the same 3 things, jumping over and back. And it's not really that big of a problem. But when you do that consistently for a couple of hours at a time, or for a day, you can really, really, really put yourself, obviously that's a very light example. There's a lot more serious things going on in people's lives, but you can really confuse yourself, and it really takes your energy, takes your focus. That's why for me, journaling is getting those things down on paper, where I can just write them down and be like, okay, well, this is really what's affecting me. There's only 3 primary things, and then I'm making all these small things of like, what time am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? How do I have enough stuff? Have I everything there? Have my gym gear cleaned? All this comes in together, and it makes it such a problem. But for journaling, for me anyway, I find if you just jot them down, as you say, it's like it declutters it. It's like organized. It's like cleaning your room. Do you know when you clean your room and you've completely different perspective on everything after it, different perspective on life? I think journaling is a way of like cleaning your head in a way, as you say, declutter your mind. I don't know if you relate to that.
No, I completely agree with that. Like, genuinely, like, it's just an easy way to just have a sigh of relief for your brain, if I was to describe it like that.
That's exactly it. And So when you're looking at some of the people that you work with then in Active with Amie, what type of a population generally, like what type of people do you work with on a day to day?
So I actually have quite a range. So I'm a GA player myself, a few GA players in there, sports players, but then the majority are just everyday people. I only coach women, by the way, so everyday women that just want to improve their just overall health and fitness. So it's interesting. People will come to me and their main, I suppose, goal will be weight loss or something like that. And that does get people to sign up. But when they come in, it's like, all right, this is where I work my magic now. Yeah. So the whole thing with Active with Amie is changing the focus from being physical to being mental. And when you focus on the mental and you focus on how you're feeling, and when you're feeling great, for example, you're going to keep doing things. Life's going to be easier. It's going to be easier to, eat well. It's going to be easier to exercise. It's going to be easier to do this, to do that. And it's focusing on that. And then as a byproduct, the physicalities come.
Yeah.
Like I said, as a byproduct of it. So people come in with the physical as their goal. But they come out at the end being like, wow, I can't believe that I use that as my goal. It's so much more important to my mind. When my mind is in the right place, everything else is so much easier. So basically that's what it is. That's where that's why I say what Active with Amie is bring movement and mindfulness together, because that's how I coach. Basically I coach backwards, I suppose. I don't start with the physical comes from the mind first.
Yeah, it's true. And it does really, because from my perspective, a lot of people that I work with are people with like back pain, and with that, in like with back pain populations, a lot of the time it's obviously the physical is there because they're in pain, but a lot of it stems from the psychological, in terms of the language they use, the way they think about their body, the way they think about themselves. And I think that without addressing that, you're fighting an uphill battle, basically, because you're just saying, okay, right, well, if you go and do these exercises, you're going to be good, but then you might be good for the next 3 hours, but then you're going to notice that it's going to kick back in. It's the same thing with the gym. Like if you just eat this food, like if you just gave someone a meal plan and you said, right, I want you to eat this food here, that's it, and I want you to do these exercises at the gym, it's great for while they have motivation for a couple of weeks. But if you're not addressing the root cause and not addressing the root problem and actually trying to break those patterns, oftentimes you're, as I said, you're fighting an uphill battle. I don't know, does that relate to you? Is that something that you may have come across when you were working with people originally? Is that how it stemmed out, or how would you describe it?
Yes, absolutely. So my whole coaching approach is around education. If people aren't educated, they're not going to know themselves. So I'm a qualified sports nutritionist as well. I am qualified to give you a meal plan, but I will not give you a meal plan. And if you ask me, I'm still not going to give it to you, because the thing is, it's like that saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, he will eat for his whole life.
Yeah.
When you give someone the tools, when you teach someone about food, when you teach someone why they're eating something, when you teach someone like a carb is for energy, it's not to hate, like it's not something to hate, like society, or I don't know, for women, especially growing up in the media and stuff, carbs have always been demonized, for example, whereas I'm like, give me a carb every single day of the week, I will eat it, because my focus is always on my mind. It's always on sports performance. It's always on energy. And that's what I'm trying to teach with clients. That's just one example, for example. But yeah, it's just educating people, because people aren't educated on these things, and they're so important. Like there's three fundamentals, or fundamentals probably like the wrong word, but three things in life. There's food, there's reproduction, and there's sleep. And if people don't know how, like, to live, basically, if people don't know how to deal with them, how are they going to continue on? And like, if I was to give someone a meal plan, for example, just to like put it back into that context, they will know and they will be great for the duration of our coaching, but they're not going to stick to it long term, because that's going to be, number one, restrictive. They're not going to enjoy it. They're not going to learn anything. So by educating someone on something, they're set up for life. And that's exactly what I want. And like, on top of it, you have the accountability from me. I am your friend. Like, I'm a friend. I'm not a coach. I'm a coach, obviously, but I'm going to be your friend at the same time. Like, and then just everything else in between, I suppose. It's just, yeah, education is so important.
And what are some of the hurdles that you see people coming into then? What are some of the barriers that people run into in the early stages of that?
Early stages. So I think because people have been so primed to focus on being, so I'm going to give women for the example, because that's who I coach. Women have been primed to be smaller their whole life. So this is where I differ. So if I was to give my own personal example, I used to be underweight, and not on purpose. I just like, I've been sporty my whole life. I used to play like GA, soccer, basketball, handball, running. I do all that at the same time growing up. So it wasn't an unhealthy way. I was just really overly active. So I was really, really small. And then I remember when I was or we'll say skinny. When I was 15, I made the decision I was going to join a gym because I wanted to improve my performance on the camogie pitch. So I went through this phase of gaining weight. So I gained weight to become better. And that was so unheard of at the time. People like, it was so unheard of. People were always trying to lose weight. So what I find with people, right, or clients in the earlier on stages, like a problem that they do have is they're still fixated on not getting results like this really, really quickly. And I'm like, if you wanted to get results really, really quickly and see these drastic changes, you can get a coach that will do that, but I'm not the coach for you to do that. I am not going to prioritize you being a really, really small body fat percentage because number one, it's not sustainable. Number two, you're going to absolutely hate your life. Number three, your health is going to go down the drain. My sole focus as a coach is your health and your well-being always. And that's where the mindset comes in hugely. That's where the education comes in hugely. I'm telling you why you're doing this exercise. I'm telling you why you're eating this macronutrient. I'm telling you what this vitamin does. And I think it does take obviously a few weeks for clients to realize that and to realize the importance of that, because it's something that hasn't been focused on ever in our society. So that's the problem I have. But then when the flip switches, and it's usually around week 4, and I notice it all the time, I'd be sending the voice notes and I'd be like, there we go. Now this is where we begin. So it's just that slow process. But yeah, it's just getting the girls there because it does take time, of course.
Oh, it does, especially if you have a belief that's ingrained. Like trying to break someone's belief that's ingrained for years and that society is telling them is a certain way is probably one of the biggest challenges with coaching, I find anyway, is because you're just fighting against them, not fighting against them, you're trying to work with them obviously, but when there's something that's just reinforced by their environment, reinforced by everyone around them, it's so difficult to try to say, okay, right, let's just stop thinking that way for a while. We're going to just try this out. When you see that improvement, or when you see that on week 4, what are some of the, like, what's something that you know is going to lead to that? Like, how do you know that's, okay, right, it's week 4. We know that we're really going to start seeing an improvement here. What's a mindset shift?
Week 4 is just like a kind of random ballpark, but it's usually kind of the time where I do see it. But I think I even noticed, so one of the questions I have in my check-in form is what's your biggest win of the week? So like earlier on in we'll say the coaching, it could be, oh, I'm down a pound or I'm down this. And like, I'll always be like, well, that's not the most important, but we'll continue on and it's still a win. But then usually like on the later on weeks, their biggest win is like, I am feeling so much better. I have so much energy. I'm so much happier. I have a pep in my step. My sleep is so much better. They're looking at the lifestyle factors that are really, really important. So I really noticed that in them as well. And like, you can just tell by their tone of like how they're filling out the form, the language they're using. Like, it's like, I read it and I'm like, oh my God, you're on a high vibe right now. It's working. I don't know. I don't know if it's it's just in my head subconsciously, but they focus on how they're feeling, and you can really notice in their feedback on that rather than how they're looking. Of course, how they're looking and the change in that is a massive win too. And it is huge and it does add confidence. I'm not going to, put that down or anything, but when we really see an improvement in the lifestyle factors like the stress, the sleep, the energy levels and stuff, that's when I know that like it's really, really, it's kind of getting into their heads now, basically.
Yeah, I think sleep as well. Sleep is one that people really underestimate, the effect that sleep has on your decisions and decisions that you make throughout the day. And I was actually only talking to Clare recently on a podcast, and we were saying, I would love to see the results of, let's say, screen time versus sleep time. So if you sleep under 7 hours versus if you sleep over 7 hours, the amount of time that you spend on your phone or the amount of time that you spend mindlessly scrolling, your decisions when you've slept poorly for maybe not one night, but a couple of nights in a row, obviously after one night as well, they're so drastically different. It's so hard to make. And I notice it myself all the time. Like you nearly always go for the easier option when you're sleep deprived. In ways, you nearly always decide what's the handiest thing here, and even though okay, right, might not be the best option, but you'll still tend to lean on that side of things. I think anyway. I think that your barrier to your discipline, I suppose, goes out the window in a lot of ways. Do you notice that with sleep as well, or is sleep is obviously something you focus on a good bit with clients?
Yeah, 100%. Sleep is the foundation for everything. Like, I do not care what anybody says. Like I said earlier on, there's 3 things that are really important in life for a living, I suppose. It's food, it's reproduction, and it's sleep. Sleep is the one that's not focused on. There's a book, Why We Sleep, by, I can't remember his first name, something Walker.
Matthew Walker, is it?
Matthew.
Yeah.
basically everything you need to know about sleep. So if I was to describe sleep, it is a foundation of everything. If you were to imagine a house, and if you were to pull the foundation of the house out from beneath it, that is your sleep. When sleep is off, everything crumbles down. Whether that be, if I was to take it from like, as a fitness and wellness coach, if we were to take exercise and food into it, if you're tired, you're going to crave comfort. Where is that going to come from? In the form of comfort food. It's going to be a lot harder to get nutrient dense food into. Same with exercise. If you're tired, you're going to have no energy. The last thing you want to do after work is go to the gym and exercise or go out for a walk. So when we tackle the foundations and the basics, which is your sleep, it is like your life improves. Everything improves. Everything is so much easier. And the same, like you said, with decision making, your decision making is better. Like, when you're tired, you're not going to make the right decisions. You're probably going to be snappy at people as well. Everything is going to be affected by your sleep. And then even if we were to go on a tangent from that, if we were to take alcohol into consideration, that's like another problem that, I suppose maybe not a problem, but it's something I would say a problem that makes say like a fitness journey a lot harder, is your alcohol. But if we're even to put alcohol into a sleep kind of context, it completely screws up your sleep as well. Like, it's just insane. Like, you even know yourself, you have the anxiety, you feel anxious, you feel exhausted. It's because your body is not actually sleeping. Like, after a night of drinking, you're lying in your bed, you're asleep. You're not actually asleep. You're basically awake. And that's why the next morning you're so exhausted. I think you're not able to get into deep sleep. And when you're not in deep sleep, you're not getting good quality sleep. So you may as well be lying awake for the whole night. So it's just so important.
Another one as well is caffeine. I think people underestimate the effect of caffeine on sleep. And in Ireland, especially, cups of tea. Like, how many people have a cup of tea between the hours of 6 and 10 at night? For me, that's always something that I go after. I remember I was working with a lady for a while, and she had this unrelenting back pain. Like, it just would not stop. And we were working on everything to get her, to start getting it right. Now, there was a couple of things. It was actually an interesting one, that there was somebody at work that she was avoiding as well, and there was conflict there that was contributing to it. But how she was avoiding this person at work, she was actually just going in and getting a cup of tea every time. So it turned out that she was having 12 cups of tea in a day, just going in and out nonstop, and then having them late at night as well. And I was like, do you feel that's contributing to the fatigue that you have every day? She was like, no, because I've always done it. And I was like, yeah, you've always done it, but it seems that it's coming to a bit of a head now. What people don't realize is when you have a lot of caffeine in your system, it actually blocks REM sleep, I think is what it is in ways, which is your cognitive recovery and your emotional recovery. And a lot of people don't realize that has a snowball effect. You might not get it one day, but if you do that consistently for a couple of days or a couple of months at a time, your emotional regulation goes out the window, and you can't tolerate a lot of things. So for that one specifically, I obviously, once we changed the 12 cups of tea a day to 2 cups of tea a day, there was a drastic improvement within 2 days. And people don't really realize how much of an effect that can have on you. And I think what you're in the sphere that you're in with weight loss and with, sorry, I shouldn't say weight loss, come back again, with transformations or with in the health and wellness sphere, I think it's so important for people as well. And how do you get that information across to people? Because I think everyone knows you need to sleep, but how do you get the information? How do you explain to a client or show a client how important it is? I know it's obviously education side of things, but is there any other way that you can really nail that point home? Anything that you've found that's worked?
I think when they see the change in themselves, so I always say to my clients, it's a two-way thing here. If you, like, we're working together, I'm helping you, but it's up to you to implement what I say. If you don't implement, you're going to stay the same. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
And obviously there'll be weeks that people are really, really busy and they won't be able to. That is so fine. Like, I'm such a compassionate coach. I'm not going to be someone that's going to roar at you for not doing something or whatever the case may be. When, like, say for example, if I was like, right, we need to focus on sleep more, we need to be getting minimum 7 to 8 hours, ideally 8 where you can. And when they actually start to implement that advice, and I will keep saying it every single week, if they come to me and they still haven't done it, I will keep saying it. And eventually they're going to be like, okay, let's give it a go. Then they give it a go and they're like, oh my God, Amie, such a difference. And I see, there you go. So I think it's just the repetition behind it as well, but also describing it as well. So I can be like, right, get 8 hours sleep, done. Or I can be like, get 8 hours sleep because this is what it's going to do for you. When you give the reason why behind something, they're a lot more inclined to do it. And then when they do it, they see the difference and that will motivate them to keep going. It's like that whole motivation comes after action. It doesn't come before action. It comes as a result of getting a result from your action.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah. Dive into that one a small bit more. Motivation comes after action. Yeah. That's a nice quote. Because I always like look at like that. the discipline versus motivation side of things, because I always feel like motivation, you feel, but that's actually a really good point. Yeah. So I suppose it does come after, once you hit that first gym session, you're feeling good. You come home, you're like, right, that next gym, you're nearly looking forward to the next one after it.
Yes, like the thing is, there's motivation when you start anything. Like I would argue that it's motivation mixed with excitement. Your excitement, you're like, there's something new I'm working on here. Of course, there's motivation as well, but the thing is, that's so short lived. So then you need to tap into the discipline to do it. Then by tapping into the discipline, you do it more. Then you're doing the action. You're seeing the result of the action, and you're like, shit, let's go. More motivation. So yeah, I would say personally, like huge motivation will come after your action, and you need to remind yourself of that as well. So yeah, that's an example I always give with clients too. And then it's like you, and I said that to you, you're like, ooh, I've never thought about it that way. They're the exact same when I say that, and it makes so much sense.
It does, yeah, it does, because it is like, it's so fleeting, but at the same time, it's so powerful. Like if you can tap into that just to get the ball rolling, like, and I think that's how a lot of people really struggle with, is to get the first start. Obviously, then keeping it going after that is a bit more difficult. But in ways, I think motivation is needed at the start just to kick it off. I won't spend too much longer now, because I don't want to hold you too much longer. But in terms of getting the ball rolling and kicking off, how would you recommend people start? Let's say females, let's say ladies specifically. How would you recommend they make a start on improving their health and wellness today? What's the first thing that you would go towards?
I would say start small. So I have experience of it with clients coming to me, of course, where, you know, they will get so overwhelmed with everything at the start that sometimes when a client comes to me, I won't even put a workout program. Now, obviously, it's completely personalized, so this will depend on the person. So sometimes a client might come and I'm like, okay, we just need to increase your steps for this week. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to start small. So if I was just to give advice to any person, start small. People underestimate the effect of small daily choices. All those 1% better choices that you make every single day snowball, compound, and they add up hugely overall. But it's only when they're done consistently.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that is the most important thing. And at the same time, celebrating the small wins, I think really, really helps people as well. If you hit that steps goal, instead of just focusing on the next thing, coming back, even being that bit more mindful and realizing, being grateful that you were able to do it, and realizing that you did hit that before moving on to the next one. Amie, I'm delighted with everything we covered there. I don't know if there's I think we went through everything that we wanted. I suppose the last question I'll ask you is, what does health mean to you?
Health. Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, this is a hard question next to something I'm passionate about. But if I say the first thing that comes to my mind, health means to me, it means that I'm able to do the things that bring me joy in life, genuinely. Like being mentally and physically capable to live the life I want to be is health. And it obviously is going to be different for a lot of people, but health is happiness. Health is your wealth. Everybody says that. So for me to be happy, I need to be able to play my GA. I need to be able to exercise. I need to be able to mind my mind. I need to be able to work on my business every single day. And in a mind space, I suppose that is optimal for me. So to do that, then I have obviously my health practices, which is my mindfulness, my exercise, etc., etc. So yeah, it's just to be able to do the things that bring me joy in life, and it comes by obviously putting health practices into my life to make myself capable to do it. Perfect. Off the cuff was a great answer. So I think what we'll leave it on is, where can people find you? Yes, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm actually now on TikTok as well. TikTok seems to be the new way forward. So at Amie Wiley. Now, spell my name a small bit differently. So AMIE_Wiley, WILEY. So you'll find me on there, and then you'll see my Active with Amie tagged on my profile too. Lovely. And Amie, thank you so much for jumping on today. All the best with your move to New York. I know you're going to be going over and back. And yeah, really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast. Of course, it's such a good conversation. Thanks a million, Robbie. Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening, and we will chat to you all again next week. Have a good one. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and BRIA programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you'll find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.